For thousands of years, Earth had been forgotten, left to the ravages of time and neglect. Once a thriving world full of bustling cities, advanced technology, and endless possibility, it now stood silent and empty, a mysterious event, long lost. In the annals of history, wiped out most of humanity, leaving only a handful of survivors. They were the fortunate few who, in their desperation, sought refuge in the deep underground bunkers, safe from the devastation above. These survivors, scientists, engineers, and military personnel, entered a deep sleep, frozen in time, awaiting the moment when it would be safe to return to the surface. But that moment never came. The world outside, once full of life, grew still. Nature began to reclaim the land, and humanity's legacy slowly faded into the earth. Above them, an alien species known as the Var came. Unaware of the humans' existence, the Var colonized Earth, using its resources for their own ends. The planet, once full of promise, became little more than a supply world for the alien invaders. Cities were destroyed, and the once bustling civilization was reduced to a distant memory. However, deep beneath the surface, in the forgotten vaults of Earth's most secretive facilities, something stirred. Humanity's final bastion lay in a network of ancient bunkers, sealed tight and untouched for centuries. These underground complexes, constructed by humanity's greatest minds, held the last hope for the planet's future, if anyone could ever find them. The aliens had never found these hidden sanctuaries, and they had no reason to believe humans had ever returned to the surface. To them, humanity was nothing but a myth, a species long extinct. But everything changed when Leah, a scavenger living on the outskirts of the alien-controlled wasteland, stumbled upon one of the ancient bunkers. She was no more than a curious wanderer, hoping to find scraps of technology or useful relics among the ruins of the old world. Leah's people, a small band of survivors, lived in the shadows, hiding from the Var's watchful eyes. They made do with what they could find, always in search of something to help them survive. But nothing had prepared her for what she discovered that day. Buried beneath layers of rubble, she uncovered the entrance to a massive underground facility. It was an anomaly, an ancient door still sealed, covered in symbols that no one in her time could recognize. It called to her, drawing her closer with an almost magnetic force. She had heard the stories, the legends of Earth's lost history, but never had she imagined she would be the one to uncover a relic so ancient, so powerful. Without fully understanding what she was doing, Leah activated the entrance. The mechanisms groaned to life after centuries of slumber, their ancient gears turning with a sound that echoed like a thunderclap in the silence of the wasteland. The door opened, revealing the dark, forgotten world beneath. A rush of cold air, thick with the scent of dust and rust, flowed from within. As Leah stepped inside, she felt the weight of the past press down on her. This place was no ordinary bunker. It was something far greater. She wandered through the long, sterile corridors, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with strange, intricate technology, machines that pulsed faintly, as if still alive, waiting to be awakened. And then, as she ventured deeper into the heart of the bunker, she found them. The sleepers. Rows upon rows of humans, preserved in stasis, each one wrapped in a cocoon of advanced technology. These were not mere survivors. They were the elite, humanity's last hope, frozen in time to one day rise again. But now, their slumber had been disturbed. Their time had come. Without fully understanding the consequences of her actions, Leah pressed a button that would forever change the course of history. The sleepers began to awaken, their eyes opening for the first time in thousands of years. The world above, once silent, began to stir. The Var, still unaware of the humans' return, continued their reign over a world they had come to believe was theirs. But beneath the surface, humanity's last hope had risen, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. What would happen when the sleepers fully awoke? Would they remember the world they once knew, or would they find a new Earth, one overrun by alien invaders? And more importantly, how would the aliens react when they realized that humanity, thought, long extinct, was alive once more? Leah's discovery would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. Earth was no longer a forgotten world, it was a battleground, and humanity was about to fight for its future. As the first rays of the sun touched the surface of a long-forgotten Earth, Leah and the group of survivors she had awakened slowly began to explore the vast underground complex that had kept humanity's last hope hidden for 5,000 years. The bunker was unlike anything they had ever seen before, its architecture both sleek and imposing, its walls covered in strange symbols and advanced technology far beyond their comprehension. It was clear that this place was built by humanity, but a humanity that had once been far more advanced than the world they now found themselves in. The survivors, weary and wide-eyed with awe, tread carefully through the corridors, stepping into rooms filled with machines that hummed with an eerie energy. It wasn't long before they realized that this facility wasn't just a shelter. It was a vault of knowledge, a library of humanity's greatest minds, all stored away for the moment when the world would need them most. Deep within the heart of the bunker, Leah uncovered the central chamber, where rows upon rows of stasis pods stood like tombs. The people inside, frozen in time, were not just ordinary humans. They were the architects of a once thriving empire. These were the leaders, the scientists, the strategists, the warriors, and the dreamers of humanity's golden age. Their minds, preserved in digital matrices, held the collective knowledge of an advanced civilization, knowledge that was now being awakened piece by piece. Leah's hands shook as she activated the control panel, unsure of what would happen next. With a hum of machinery and a flash of light, the pods began to open. Inside were not just bodies, but entire lifetimes of experience waiting to be unleashed. As the first few sleepers awoke, they blinked in confusion, their minds adjusting to the present world after centuries of slumber. It didn't take long, however, for them to regain their senses. Their eyes sharpened with intelligence, and the quiet murmur of ancient languages echoed through the chamber. These were not just people, they were humanity's last champions. They had been chosen to guide, to rebuild, and to fight. And now, they would rise to face the world that had changed in their absence. The group quickly realized that they had been dormant for far longer than anyone could have imagined. The Earth they once knew had been colonized by a powerful alien race known as the Var. The Var had claimed the planet for themselves, exploiting its resources and turning it into a wasteland. But as Leah and the awakened humans studied the alien invaders, they began to understand just how inferior the Var were compared to the human civilization of old. The knowledge stored in the minds of the sleepers revealed that humanity had once possessed technologies far beyond anything the Var could dream of. They had mastered space travel, developed energy sources that could power entire planets, and created weapons that could wipe out entire fleets with a single blow. To the humans, the Var were nothing more than a pale shadow of the power they once wielded. The survivors, now filled with a sense of purpose and determination, began to work together to unlock the secrets of their ancestors' technologies. Each newly awakened leader brought their own unique set of skills to the table. Some were military strategists, others were brilliant engineers, and some were scholars of forgotten sciences. As they pieced together the fragments of knowledge, they realized that they had not just been preserved as a last resort, they had been safeguarded to reclaim the world that had been taken from them. The technology in their hands was not just a means of survival, it was the key to overthrowing the alien invaders and restoring humanity to its rightful place. The first tests of their newfound abilities were small, but they were enough to show that the humans were far more capable than they had first imagined. The Var, who had ruled the planet for centuries, began to notice strange disruptions in their systems, anomalies they couldn't explain. What they didn't realize was that beneath the surface, humanity was slowly but surely coming back to life. Leah and her team had no intention of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They knew that the time to reclaim Earth was now. The awakening of the sleepers was the spark that would ignite the fire of rebellion. Humanity had been dormant for far too long, and now it was time to show the VAR that their reign was over. What the aliens didn't know was that they weren't just fighting against survivors. They were about to face the full force of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. And this time, humanity wasn't going to sleep again. The sudden resurgence of humanity did not go unnoticed. The VAR, an alien species that had ruled over Earth for centuries, were unprepared for the reawakening of their long-forgotten adversary. For generations, they had treated the planet as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. They had come to Earth, wiped out its original inhabitants, and built an empire on its shattered ruins. To the VAR, humanity was an ancient, irrelevant species, one that had disappeared long before they arrived. They believed Earth was theirs to control forever. But now, something was stirring beneath the surface, something the VAR could not have anticipated. The humans, once thought extinct, were waking up, and they brought with them knowledge and power that the aliens could not match. Leah and the newly awakened survivors wasted no time. They knew they had to rebuild, and quickly. They began to unlock the secrets of their ancestors' technology, which was far more advanced than anything the VAR had ever encountered. The aliens had underestimated humanity, thinking their weapons, resources, and strategies were the pinnacle of power. What they didn't realize was that the humans' legacy held something much more dangerous, something even the VAR feared. Beneath the surface of Earth, hidden for millennia, lay a weapon of unimaginable power, the Beast. This was no ordinary machine, but a creation of ancient humanity, an unstoppable force capable of reshaping entire planets. The Beast had been built with a single purpose in mind: to protect Earth from any threat, no matter the cost. It was a last line of defense, a failsafe that humanity had put in place in case they ever faced a peril they could not defeat. Now, as the humans unearthed the Beast, they found themselves staring at the most powerful weapon ever created by their kind. But with great power came great uncertainty. The Beast could save their world and drive the VAR away, but it could also destroy everything humanity had worked so hard to rebuild. The more they learned about the Beast, the more they understood the risk. If activated improperly, it could erase all life on Earth, not just the invaders. The first time they activated the Beast's systems, the ground itself trembled. It was a warning, a signal to the VAR that something had changed. Leah stood at the control panel, staring at the flickering lights and whirring machinery. She knew the stakes. The Beast could wipe out the VAR, but it could just as easily wipe out her people. The decision weighed heavily on her. To use the Beast was to gamble with the very fate of Earth. But not using it, in her mind, would be to accept defeat without even fighting. Word spread quickly throughout the human resistance. The Beast was awakening. News of its power reached the VAR, and they began to take notice. The aliens, once confident in their control over Earth, were suddenly uncertain. Their forces, stationed across the planet, began to prepare for an inevitable confrontation. They had known humanity's power in the past, but the resurgence of that power, the resurrection of a force they had thought long gone, was a threat they could not ignore. They began to rally their forces, sending waves of soldiers to the surface to stop the humans before they could fully harness the Beast's might. A series of skirmishes erupted across the planet. The newly awakened humans, armed with advanced technology and the knowledge of their ancestors, began to push back against the VAR. The alien forces, though powerful, were slow to adapt to the new human strategies. They were not prepared for the guerrilla tactics, the cunning and resourcefulness that humanity was capable of. The humans knew their world better than the VAR ever could. They knew the terrain, the technology, and the old ways of warfare, tools that gave them an advantage. But the beast's potential loomed over them. Each victory brought them closer to the decision. Would they use the beast to turn the tide in their favor, or would they risk everything to ensure it remained dormant, out of fear that it might become their undoing? The clash between the humans and the VAR was no longer just a battle for Earth. It had become a battle for control over the future of the planet. The humans' rise from the ashes of their ancient civilization had sparked a chain of events that would forever change the course of history. With the beast now a key player in the conflict, the humans were no longer simply fighting to survive. They were fighting to reclaim their place in the galaxy. As the VAR tightened their grip on the planet, humanity's strength and resolve would be tested like never before. And at the heart of it all stood the beast, a machine of unmatched power that could either save them or destroy them all. Would humanity be able to control the very weapon they had awakened, or would they lose themselves in the process? Only time would tell. As the beast continued to stir from its deep slumber, its power began to pulse across the battlefield, a reminder to the VAR that their reign over Earth was no longer secure. The massive, ancient machine hummed with an energy that sent ripples through the very core of the planet. The technology that had once been humanity's most guarded secret now surged with life, drawing power from the Earth itself. Its awakening was like a signal, a challenge to the alien invaders who had thought themselves unchallenged on this world. The VAR, who had grown accustomed to their dominance, now found themselves facing an entirely new kind of threat. It was not just the human soldiers, equipped with advanced weapons and strategies, but the very planet itself seemed to be awakening to fight back. The VAR, in their panic, launched a full-scale assault on humanity's newly established strongholds. Their forces descended upon the human settlements with brutal force, seeking to crush the resurgence before it could gain any real momentum. The humans, however, were far from the disorganized survivors the VAR had expected. Under the leadership of the revived generals, military strategists, and brilliant minds who had once commanded humanity's greatest armies, the humans mounted a fierce defense. Their soldiers, though fewer in number, fought with an intensity and passion that no alien force had anticipated. The VAR were shocked to discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't just its advanced technology. It was the unyielding spirit of the people themselves. Each battle was a testament to human ingenuity. As the VAR launched wave after wave of assault, the humans adapted quickly, using ancient technology in ways that were almost unrecognizable to the aliens. They repurposed forgotten weapons, transformed old war machines into new, terrifying tools of combat, and developed guerrilla tactics that caught the VAR off guard. The humans were not just fighting with guns and technology, they were fighting with their minds. They learned to think under pressure, to outmaneuver their opponents, and to turn the tide of battle with unexpected tactics. Where the VAR were, used to overwhelming force, the humans relied on precision and adaptability. The balance of power began to shift. The beast, meanwhile, was growing stronger with each passing day. Controlled by a select group of humans, the machine's influence over the battlefield became undeniable. The beast's vast power reshaped the landscape, creating massive craters and walls of energy that disintegrated anything in their path. The humans, now armed with the might of this ancient weapon, pushed the VAR back. The beast seemed unstoppable, a perfect weapon designed for one purpose: to defend Earth. But as the machine's power surged, so did the questions surrounding its true nature. The humans had learned much about the beast, but there was still much they didn't understand. Some feared that the beast, with its immense power, might not only destroy their enemies, but also threaten the very survival of humanity itself. It was a double-edged sword, a weapon that could either secure their future or obliterate it. As the war for Earth raged on, the humans' progress was undeniable. With each victory, their confidence grew, and so did their resolve. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to reclaim their birthright. But the war was far from over. The Var were relentless, and they had resources and armies far beyond anything the humans had seen. And as the battles grew more intense, the shadow of the beast loomed larger. Its presence was a constant reminder of the power humanity wielded, but also the potential danger it posed. The question on everyone's mind was whether humanity could control the beast without it consuming them all. Would the humans be able to harness its power and use it to protect their world? Or would they lose control, unleashing a force they could no longer contain? The tide of the war was turning, but the humans knew that the real test was yet to come. Every victory came at a cost, and every step forward led them closer to a confrontation with the Var that would determine the fate of the planet. With the beast now an integral part of the conflict, it was clear that humanity's greatest strength and greatest threat were intertwined. The final battle for Earth was approaching, and only time would tell whether humanity would emerge victorious, or whether they would fall to the very weapon they had awakened. As the war raged on, humanity's forces gained ground against the Var on multiple fronts. The tides of battle were shifting in their favor, but as their victories mounted, so did the complexities of their situation. The beast, humanity's ancient and powerful weapon, had become a symbol of both hope and fear. While it had proven to be a decisive force against the alien invaders, its true nature remained a question mark. With each battle, its power grew stronger, and so did the division within humanity itself. A faction of the revived humans, some of whom had once been the very architects of Earth's downfall, began to rise. These individuals, brilliant strategists, former leaders of humanity's ancient empire, believed that the beast should not merely be used to defend Earth, but to conquer the galaxy and restore humanity to its former glory. They saw the Var as nothing more than a stepping stone, a means to an end. For them, the beast was not just a weapon of protection, but the key to reawakening the ancient empire that had once ruled the stars. They argued that humanity's place in the universe was one of dominance, and to allow the Var to rule Earth was to deny humanity's rightful power. This faction believed that humanity was destined for greatness, and the beast would be the instrument of that greatness. But their vision was not shared by all. Leah, the natural-born leader who had helped awaken humanity's survivors, stood in stark opposition to this ideology. She understood the power the beast held, but she also understood the potential consequences of using it to conquer. She saw the threat it posed, not only to the Var, but to humanity itself. For Leah, the true strength of humanity lay not in domination, but in unity and restoration. She envisioned a future where humanity rebuilt its lost civilization, not through violence and conquest, but through collaboration, peace, and the lessons learned from their past mistakes. She knew that using the beast to expand humanity's reach would only lead to more destruction, and worse, the very thing they were fighting against, tyranny and oppression. Her vision for Earth's future was one of healing, not of war. But her voice, though strong, was not the only one being heard. Tensions within humanity's ranks began to grow as the divide between the factions deepened. The revived leaders, once the greatest minds of an empire long gone, were now split on the way forward. Some sided with Leah, believing that Earth's restoration could not come at the cost of the galaxy's suffering. Others, swept up in the promise of a new empire, were eager to use the beast as a tool to reshape the universe according to their own ideals. The very thing that had once unified humanity, its ability to work together toward a common goal, was now under threat. The war against the Var, which had begun as a fight for survival, was now at risk of becoming a struggle for control of humanity's future. The rift within humanity's ranks was becoming more dangerous than the alien invaders themselves. The debate over the beast was no longer just an intellectual exercise. It was becoming a matter of life and death. Would humanity use the weapon as a tool for destruction, or as a force for defense and peace? As the factions grew more divided, skirmishes broke out within the human ranks. The battlefield was no longer just a war against the Var. It was a battle for the soul of humanity. Leah, with her deep conviction, tried to unite her people, but her efforts were met with resistance from those who believed that only through conquest could humanity prove its strength. The question loomed larger. With each passing day, could they overcome their divisions before it was too late? Or would humanity's greatest weapon be their undoing? In the midst of the conflict, the beast's power continued to grow. Its potential was unmatched, its capabilities far beyond anything the factions had anticipated. As Leah stood before the massive machine, she couldn't help but wonder if humanity was truly ready for the responsibility of wielding such a force. Could they control the beast, or would it consume them all, just as it had once been created to protect them? The choice was no longer just a political one, it was a moral one, and it would define the future of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy. The war for Earth had escalated into a war for humanity's very soul, and the time for answers was running out. The conflict reached a boiling point when the faction that sought to use the beast for total domination launched a daring assault on the Var's central stronghold. It was meant to be the final strike, the act that would crush the alien invaders once and for all. But what they didn't anticipate was the catastrophic chain reaction that their actions would trigger. The beast, with its raw power and unpredictable force, began to destabilize. A low rumble shook the very foundations of the planet as energy surged out of control. The ground cracked and the skies darkened as the beast's systems began to overload. It was a weapon designed for defense, but now it seemed as if it might end up destroying the very world it had been meant to protect. Leah, along with her loyal followers, watched in horror as the machine she had once hoped could be a tool for peace began to spiral out of control. The beast had become far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The destructive faction's plan to harness its power had set into motion a sequence of events that threatened to consume Earth. The clock was ticking, and the planet's survival now hung in the balance. Leah knew she had to act quickly. If the beast wasn't stopped, it would tear the world apart, leaving nothing in its wake. But it wasn't just the weapon she had to worry about. It was the people behind it. The leaders of the destructive faction, the ones who had set this disaster into motion, were not backing down. They were convinced that the only way forward was through the total domination of the galaxy, starting with Earth. Their vision was clear: wipe out the Var, and then move on to conquer every alien species in their path. Humanity would rule the stars once again, they believed, but Leah refused to let that vision become humanity's future. As the beast raged, she and her followers moved through the chaos, fighting not just to stop the destruction, but to prevent the madness from overtaking their people. She had always believed in the strength of unity and peace, not domination and war. The stakes had never been higher. As the beast's core pulsed with overwhelming power, the atmosphere around it grew thick with tension. Leah knew that a single, wrong move could unleash the beast's full potential, sending the planet into a cataclysmic event that would wipe out everything: humanity, the Var, and every other species in its path. The conflict between the factions within humanity was no longer just a war of words. It was a full-scale battle that raged within the heart of the beast's very core. Leah found herself face-to-face with the leaders of the faction that sought to unleash its full power. The confrontation was heated, filled with words sharp enough to cut, and fueled by the fear that the world could end in an instant. The leaders of the destructive faction were unwilling to back down, convinced that their plan was the only way for humanity to reclaim its place in the galaxy. But Leah saw through their ambition. She understood that using the beast as a weapon of conquest would ultimately lead to humanity's destruction. The same machine that could protect them could also consume them if used for the wrong purposes. In the final moments, as the beast's power surged to dangerous levels, Leah stood alone at the heart of the machine. The energy surrounding her was intense, pulsing with a life of its own. Her followers had been pushed to the brink, and the factions were locked in a deadly standoff. It was time for her to make the impossible choice: destroy the beast once and for all to save Earth, or harness its power to drive the Var and every other alien species from the galaxy, ensuring humanity's dominance. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her chest. Both choices seemed impossible. If she destroyed the beast, it would mean giving up humanity's greatest weapon. But if she used it, the cost could be catastrophic, unleashing a war that could bring about the fall of civilizations. With the fate of Earth and the galaxy hanging in the balance, Leah stepped forward, her heart pounding. She had no time for hesitation. As she reached for the controls, she understood that this moment, this choice, would define humanity's future. The decision was hers, and hers alone. Could she stop the beast in time, or would its power sweep away everything they had fought? For the future of humanity rested on the razor-thin edge between destruction and salvation, and as the countdown to the machine's meltdown ticked away, Leah made her choice. The world held its breath. Leah's choice to save Earth came at an unimaginable cost, pushing the planet and its people to the very edge of destruction. As the beast's power surged, threatening to obliterate everything, Leah held her breath. The weight of the decision pressed on her chest, knowing that each moment could lead to humanity's end or its rebirth. She knew that she couldn't let the machine's devastating power spiral out of control, yet she couldn't let it be wasted either. With a steady hand, she stabilized the beast, using its unimaginable energy to push back the alien forces that had terrorized Earth. The Var, their forces crumbling under the sudden onslaught of the beast's power, were forced into retreat, fleeing the planet they had once ruled. For a brief moment, it seemed as though humanity had won, but the battle was not over. The price for victory, however, was steep. As Leah watched the Var retreat into the stars, she knew that she had to make a painful decision, one that would determine the future of Earth. With a heavy heart, Leah ordered the shutdown of the beast. She had seen the destruction it was capable of, and while it had helped them win, she understood that it was too powerful, too dangerous to be allowed to continue functioning. The potential for its misuse was too great. The beast was humanity's greatest weapon, but it was also its greatest risk. By shutting it down, Leah ensured that Earth would not be ruled by its power, but rather by the wisdom and courage of its people. The decision was final, and as the beast powered down, a heavy silence fell over the battlefield. The threat of its overwhelming force was no longer looming over them, but the cost of that decision was heavy. The future of humanity was no longer tied to the machine's might, but to their ability to rebuild and move forward without it. With the Var gone, humanity was left with the daunting task of rebuilding their world. But this time, they did so with a sense of responsibility. The war had been won, but the true challenge lay ahead: to rebuild Earth into a place of peace and prosperity. The world that had once been dominated by conflict, ambition, and conquest now had the opportunity to grow into something greater, an Earth that would stand as a beacon of unity, not just for humanity, but for all those who sought peace. As humanity's leaders and survivors began to work together, they realized that they were not alone. The struggle had not only united them as humans, but had also forged new bonds with other species who had fought alongside them in their war against the Var. The alliances formed in the heat of battle now stood as pillars of a new future. No longer would humanity see itself as a conqueror, but as a protector of peace, a guardian of the galaxy. The very qualities that had made them resilient in the face of destruction: courage, adaptability, and the unyielding will to survive, would now guide them into this new era. The story of humanity's rise from the ashes of a fallen world had come full circle. What had once been a civilization teetering on the edge of extinction was now on the brink of an interstellar future. Leah and her people understood that the galaxy was vast, and while they were not the rulers of it, they would be the ones to stand as its most formidable protectors. The era of conquest and war was behind them. What lay ahead was a future built on cooperation, diplomacy, and understanding. Humanity, with its renewed sense of purpose, would face any challenge that arose in the stars, not with the destructive force of the beast, but with the strength of their hearts and the wisdom of their past. As the first ships of a new alliance launched into the cosmos, humanity stood on the threshold of a new dawn. They were not the conquerors of the galaxy, but its most steadfast guardians, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold. The stars, once a symbol of the unknown, now represented a future full of hope and possibility, a future humanity would shape together.